All right, it's about that time to take a look at the papers, the headlines making the rounds across Nigeria in the dailies. This is Freshly Pressed on the Smooth Breakfast on Smooth 98.1, your love music, a love live station. It's 32 minutes past 7 a.m. on a Thursday. Ayokunmi right here. Great to have you join us this morning to take a look at the stories, number one, to get analysis, number two, and of course, for you to share your thoughts, your perspective, your opinions with us as well, because we always love to hear from you. Joining me this morning on a Thursday, as they usually do, Mr. C and of course Gbubemi are with me in the studio. Well, one half of the studio, and but hey, in with me in spirit. Very good morning to you, Gbubemi. Great to have you on a Thursday.
Good morning, Ayokunmi. Good morning, Mr. C. Good morning, Lagos, and Happy New Year.
Indeed, happy New Year to you and Mr. C. Great to see you once again.
Good morning, Aya. Good morning, Gbubemi. Good morning, Lagos. I hope your week hasn't been as stressful as Arsenal's. Let's run.
Well, Arsenal got 3 points yesterday, even though I was very annoyed at the fact that Spurs did a Spurs as they usually do. I wasn't surprised. I was hoping that they wouldn't Spurs, but Spurs can always show you that they will Spurs every time. But anyways, uh it's all good. We keep it moving. Banter will flow very soon. Anyways, yeah, just for you to know that you can join us this morning by sharing your thoughts on WhatsApp on 0809 444 0981 0809 444 That is the WhatsApp number. We're also streaming live on YouTube at Smooth 981 FM Lagos. Smooth 981 FM Lagos. Those are the ways that you can join us this morning on the conversation. All right, Bobby, let's start with one of the biggest stories that came out yesterday, and it has to do with the inflationary numbers. We have the numbers for December, and of course, uh, an upward trajectory once again. And it doesn't seem as if this is going to take a pause anytime soon, even though the rise was minimal-ish. But anyways, let's take a look at the story coming out of the Punch. Now, the organized private sector has expressed worry over the continued hike in inflation rates in Nigeria, stressing that this will further raise the cost of production, raw materials, logistics, and machinery, among others. Now, as I said, the National Bureau of Statistics on Wednesday, that's yesterday, reported that Nigeria's inflation rate rose to 34.8% in December 2024, reflecting a slight increase from the 34.6% recorded in November. 0.2% increase, minimal, but still in an upward trajectory. Now, looking at this, and I think if you cast your mind back to some things that were said by the president and all that, talking about reducing the inflationary rate, cutting it down to about 15% or thereabouts, looking at the numbers going up once again, doesn't seem to be going to plan just yet.
Yes. So, coincidentally, I was doing a presentation for something, and I checked those inflation figures last night as well. So I saw this, and I realized that for the same period in 2023, inflation rate was about 28 point something percent. So it's increased almost 6% within a 1 year period. And like you said, the administration a few weeks ago had also announced their plans to reduce inflation to I think about 15% or so, if I remember quite correctly. So a number of factors have affected, as we all know, the economy to cause the inflation rate to go up. Largely, a lot of the economic reforms that the president has embarked on, uh, people, arguably have been necessary, but due to lack of cushioning plans have affected inflation negatively, um, causing an increase in cost of goods,
Right,
services,
right.
food, for example. We also know that the food inflation is even at a higher percentage, I think it's almost at 40 or thereabouts. Largely what you could get for 1 naira in December 2023, you probably get for 4 5 naira, at the worst
Mm.
by December 2024. And it's not even looking like the cost of food, is coming down. For example, or someone about the price of onions. One onion bulb, 500 naira. and that's a small bulk.
Crazy.
Where previously you could probably buy a handful of onions for that same amount.
Mm.
You know, price of rice,
Let's say we talk about beans.
Exactly. And we've just come out of quote unquote dirty December, the festive season, where prices of things normally would go up slightly. The only thing I think that didn't go up in December was fuel price. So there are lots of challenges, and then also we look at the pressures on our FX as well, FX situation. So a lot of things have caused this rise in inflation. And I remember when we took the story about the president wanting to reduce the inflation rate this year. There are a lot of things that were mentioned. And we sort of, um, outlined our thoughts about what the president could do, but we didn't think, or rather, personally, I didn't think, that the administration had shown any intention to do those things. So, for example, what we talk about all the time, cost of governance. Yeah, you're doing some reforms, you're focusing on some areas, but then again, you're not focusing on all of the areas that can be impactful. We talk about there's a story we took sometime a few weeks ago as well about theft in the public service. Public servants who are in court, siphoning funds.
Misappropriated and all that.
Exactly. So things like that, consequences for actions, things like that, all of these things really do add up. So I really would like to know what the presidency, definitively wants to do to address the inflation. So when we talk about even things like, addressing the currency exchange rates, for example, pressures on imports and all of that, have also driven the cost of the dollar up, which also negatively impacts on a lot of other things, food, transportation, and all of that. So how do we manage our imports and also our exports as well? So this year it's anticipated that we're producing a lot more oil, going to earn a lot more income. So maybe that might help. But even at that, we also need to look at things like, for example, oil theft. So what are the plans to mitigate that, to make sure that we can harness more oil, that, as against before? So quite a lot of things. This year, we really would like to see the president do something, definitive to impact positively on inflation.
All right, Mr. C, do you have some thoughts to share on this particular one, looking at the inflationary numbers? Because I saw you smiling right there on the screen.
Okay, so very quickly, right? Again, this is what I've continued to say on the show. Whatever declaration or statement you issue or make, it must be backed by evidence from our present collective reality. Now, since this present administration came into office, I'm not aware of any month where inflation went down. But yet we've been consistently regaled with tales of how there's light at the end of the tunnel, the policies have started to yield fruit. It gains, we must say this honestly and clearly, right? If there's actually any light at the end of the tunnel, one area in which we should see evidence is in a reduction in the inflation numbers, no matter how small. Until we start to see that, you cannot say the economy is getting better and inflation continues to rise. What is the explanation for that? Yes, I don't have a formal degree in economics, but I think I understand the basic rudiments. So how do you explain an economy recovering and supposedly growing if your employment numbers are still down, your inflation numbers are still high? What exactly is going on? But like Gbubemi said, we look forward to 2025 and we'll see what they're going to do differently. And I stress differently because if they continue to do what they did in 2024, I'm not sure, I cannot state categorically that we'll see any marked improvement in the quality of lives that we collectively live.
All right. So, Gbubemi mentioned, talked about crude oil production ramping up this year and all of that. Now, we're going to talk about that circa 2024. Heading into the Daily Post now, Mr. C. Nigeria's crude oil revenue rose to about 50.88 trillion naira in 2024, according to industrial data. Now, data obtained from the Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission confirmed that Nigeria produced a total of 408,680,457 barrels of crude oil in 2024, with condensate included. Total oil production for 2024 was 566.79 million barrels. That's according to the NUPRC data added. So, looking at these numbers now, 2024, about 50 trillion naira has been said is what Nigeria made from crude oil sales, production, and all that. And I'm just wondering what those numbers would have been or would be if you factor in the barrels of oil that have been stolen, that have been misappropriated, and so on and so forth. But what are your thoughts on this, Mr. C?
Okay, thank you, Ayo. So in last year's budget, the plan was to produce 649.7 million barrels of crude oil. We only produced 408 million barrels, thereabouts. So there's a shortfall of at least 240 million barrels. Now, in English, what does this mean to the common man on the street? We earned about 32.91 billion US dollars for producing about 408 million barrels of crude oil. If we had produced the 649.7 million barrels, we would have earned 50.88 billion US dollars. Now, there is no official explanation or statement as to why we didn't produce the full target. So we're not told whether there were production, oil pipeline disruptions, whether any of the IOCs or the production companies declared force majeures. We're not told whether it's as a result of some crude oil theft. It's just complete radio silence. Now, it's interesting to note that even as at December, we still hadn't completely hit our OPEC target of 1.5, our OPEC quota of 1.5 million barrels per day. We're doing 1.498 million barrels per day. And this is in complete variance and contrary to the political statements made by the Minister of State, who continues to insist that we're producing at least 1.8 million barrels per day. Now, the reason why I'm not inclined to believe the Minister of State is that he's not the regulator. He doesn't collect the raw data. The regulator has collected the raw data and has given a position. Now, where there's a variance between what the Minister of State says and what the regulator says, it is safe to go with what the regulator has put out. Now, the bigger question is, Nigeria earned $32.91 billion from crude oil proceeds and sale of crude oil last year. Where did that money go? Do we feel it? Did we feel it last year? Whether in terms of the provision of public infrastructures, things to make our lives better. Look at the protracted negotiation to increase the minimum wage, and then months after they finally got around to do it, it was rendered useless, even before they started to implement it. So between the federal government, the state governments, and the local governments, can they explain to Nigerians how exactly that money was spent? Can they point to the things that the projects that they started, the projects they continued, the projects they finished, the policies they put in place to improve the standards of living for the average Nigerian scattered all over the country? And I dare say the answer would not be palatable to our ears. Now, going forward this year, I cannot categorically state at the moment what our projected oil production figures are looking like. Again, where are we going as a nation? It's one thing to earn these huge sums of money as officially declared. What are we doing with the revenues? The other day we had the governor of Imo State saying that they've been receiving increased revenue under this administration. What he cleverly failed to state was that this so-called increase was as a result of the huge depreciation of the naira against the US dollar, where the naira almost lost half its value. So in real terms, are we making more money? I'm not sure the answer is in the affirmative. But bigger questions, are there any plans to radically fight all theft this year? If they are, we don't know, we haven't heard about them. Are there plans to increase security off the pipelines, to increase security at the production terminals, to even increase security within our waterways so that super tankers and other big vessels do not come in to illegally buy stolen crude oil? And then what measures are we taking in the international market to ensure that crude oil that is stolen cannot be easily sold outside the shores of this country? So again, many, many questions, still very few answers, but it's Nigeria. Let's move.
Questions and few answers. I'm actually glad you brought up the issue of security, Mr. C, because I want to talk about this particular story coming out of the Vanguard here. A retired military veteran, Colonel Nasser Salami, has raised concerns over the quality of weapons used by Nigerian security agents in combating the newly formed terror group Lakurawa, which has been wreaking havoc in the northwest region. In an interview on Wednesday, to mark the 2025 Armed Forces Remembrance Day, Salami highlighted the alarming disparity between weapons available to security agents and those that are wielded by the insurgents. We've talked so many times about this particular issue of the weaponry available to military personnel and how they more or less tend to be outgunned by all these insurgents, terrorists, bandits, and whatever it is that you want to call them. Now, this is a retired military veteran talking about this particular issue. I mean, how do we intend to win the war against banditry, against terrorism, if we don't have the weapons and the equipment needed to do so?
It's a bit worrying that we hear things like this, now and again. It's either the weapons are outdated, or they don't have enough weapons, or they're not being paid salaries, or they're not fully equipped. Basically, we keep hearing stories about how our military doesn't appear to have the wherewithal to pursue the insurgents that they're addressing all across the nation. And it's a bit worrying because the defense budget is usually one of the highest, if not the highest, every year in the national budget. And one begins to wonder, where exactly is that money going? I think that at this point in time, it's enough for the presidency or the Ministry of Defense officials to be able to take a proper look at this situation. Let's even find out if it's true in the first place. Let's find out if it's true, and then if it is true, what has happened exactly? So all of the money that has been allocated to all of these things, where is that money going? What exactly is happening regarding equipping, our officers? Yesterday was Armed Forces Remembrance Day.
Right.
And we've lost quite a number of officers in the last almost, I think it's about over 15 years now, ever since, all the various forms of terrorist groups have been a point in focus for the army, and to the memory of those people, I think it would be a disservice if this is not properly addressed. Because what it suggests is that we're not arming these people with the right tools, but we're sending them, irrespective of that, to the battlefront to fight a war that they're most likely going to lose because they don't have the right equipment and they don't have the right motivation. So I think it's highly critical that the government takes a look into this situation, to first of all find out if it is true, and if it is, to be able to address these issues. But over and above this, I think one other means of fighting these battles that doesn't appear to have been so emphasized is using local intelligence. We don't hear too much of that. These people operate within communities.
Right.
We hear all the time about how they've taken over some communities. They make those people pay money to them or provide food or whatever.
Paying tributes and all those things.
Exactly. So it's high time, if it's not being practiced already, that the military uses the local people in the local communities to be able to gather intelligence so that you can fight a more intelligent war.
Right.
You understand? So yes, they may have superior firepower, but if you have the advantage of foreknowledge of what these people are going to do, there's a possibility that you may be able to, attack them in ways that they may not be prepared for.
Mm.
But anyway, but that doesn't even, supersede the topic at hand. Like I said, I believe it's very, very important that the government addresses these issues. We can't keep allocating so much money to defense and keep hearing things like this. It's very embarrassing. And at the very risk, this local community is operating largely within Niger State. And at a point, it was reported that they had taken over most of the state, although that was debunked by the governor at some point.
Mm.
But a lot of communities in around the northeast, northwest, north central areas have been taken over. So something needs to be done.
Definitely.
These are threats to the sovereignty of the country.
Most definitely. I will say one thing before I jump back into Mr. C. Piggybacking off of what you said, that Suki Gates, it's fresh in the memory on one hand. And then you mentioned that concerning security, concerning defense, it is part of the budget that has a very, very huge allocation. And I'm bringing that to your table here, Mr. C, because we're heading into the premium times right now. Now, the Minister of State for Defense, that's Bello Matawale, has described the allocation to the ministry as inadequate, stating that his ministry is expected to perform wonders despite poor funding. Now, if you recall, right here on Freshly Pressed yesterday, we talked about the Minister of Defense, that's Mr. Mohammed Abubakar, requesting the House of Reps to provide an additional 50 armored personnel carriers, as APCs, in the 2025 budget to flush out bandits in the country. Now, the Minister of State for Defense has said, well, that money that you guys have budgeted for, so read through. Mr. C, please weigh in on this one.
Okay, thank you, Ayo. So I'm going to start off this way. Both the Minister for Defense and the Minister of State for Defense are immediate past governors of two northern states in Nigeria, right? And when they were governors, their states were ravaged with security challenges. We are not aware of anything wonderful or significant they did to apprehend or reduce those security challenges in their respective states. So yesterday we had the minister come out and say we need 50 extra armored personnel carriers. Today we have the Minister of State saying that, oh, we need more money, that 50 billion naira is inadequate, and they probably need at least 20 billion naira more. Then when you read the story, it even gets more shocking, more disgraceful that in the entire calendar year of 2024, according to these gentlemen, that there was zero allocation for the purposes of maintaining or renovating or refurbishing existing army barracks scattered all over the country. Zero allocation. But yet we've been regaled with tales of spending by State House, the Aso Rock, but that's a different matter. Now, the bigger question is this. They keep calling for more money, more equipment. We got aerial platforms, about 11 or 37 Tucano jets. We're still not sure whether those jets are being used within Nigeria for the purposes for which they were obtained. Remember, those jets did not come at a bargain. We paid premium dollars for those jets. Now, the existing equipment we have, how are we using them? Because we keep hearing tales from soldiers deployed to the battlefront that they're being sent there without weapons or inadequate weapons. And that's why we've continued to see and experience episodes of soldiers purportedly going on mutinies or saying that they've had enough, they no longer want to serve in the armed forces. Now, the Minister of State is asking for 20 billion that they need to pay group life assurance and all of that. Now, insurance policies typically are run from on a year-to-year basis, right? So
Right.
the bigger question is this. The policies he intends to renew, when did they run out? Did they run out in 2023? Did they run out in 2024? And then what's the plan for 2025? Now, beyond that, have they been able to articulate a proper plan along with the existing service chiefs on how to combat the security challenges in the north of Nigeria, particularly? We hear that in the northeast now, the use of unmanned aerial vehicles has been totally banned because they understand that certain non-state actors use these UAVs for illegal and unlawful purposes. But beyond all of this, even if you give these guys 200 APCs, if there's no coherent plan on the table to execute, it's a waste of everyone's time. It's a waste of our resources. And at this point, I'm firmly of the opinion that there must be better placed Nigerians in terms of experience, in terms of qualifications that can head the Ministry of Defense. We have we have legions of retired generals spread across the three branches of the armed forces. We can get any of them to head the ministry. It cannot continue to be these two civilians who have clearly shown that the shoes they've been asked to fill are bigger than them. And if we continue and subsist with them, I'm not sure where we're headed.
Really and truly. Okay, real quick, Mr. C, you talked about some state house spending and all that, and I had a little smile on my face because I want to bring you and we in on this one really quickly. It's in Premium Times now. It says it talks about the state house, which is the seat of the president and the vice president. They spent about 5.9 billion naira on cars in a period where Nigeria is experiencing its worst cost of living crisis in a generation. And these are as a result of some of the policies introduced by the government. But still, that spending actually occurred. Now, on Tuesday, the Senate Committee on Special Duties on special duties, queried the State House for spending 3.9 billion naira to purchase operational vehicles and another 2 billion naira to replace its SUVs in 2024. Just looking at these numbers, my mind is spinning faster than a top. Mr. C, because of time, let's get your thoughts on this one and then
Okay,
I'll
so very quickly, we're an unserious country ruled by unserious people, right? Now, what is an operational vehicle? What is an SUV? You spend 3.9 billion on operational vehicles. Now, the last president came in 2015 and he left in 2023. So a vehicle bought in 2015 is at best 10 years this year. A number of us, I know a number of people who still drive cars that are at least 10 years old. They're not exactly bad because when you buy these vehicles, you're buying them brand new. Now, you've gone on to buy vehicles 3.9 billion naira, operational vehicles. Operational vehicles used for what purpose? What operations? Who is entitled to the use of these vehicles? Could these vehicles be part of the vehicles we see in the convoy of the president anytime he's moving around in Lagos or in Abuja? Then another 2 billion to replace sport utility vehicles. First question, the vehicles they supposedly replaced, where are those vehicles? What happened to them? What stage are they in? And then what vehicles did you exactly buy? What make, what model, what year? And in the face of everything we're going through, was this a priority expenditure? Was this a necessary expenditure? Because last year, these same guys still bought vehicles. No, 2023, when they came in, they still bought vehicles. And there's still plans in this budget to buy vehicles. So the question is, who are the spirits using all these vehicles? How many of these vehicles will be adapted to the CNG program initiated by the presidency? So again, many questions, no answers.
Okay, you're just weigh really, really quickly on this particular one.
Yeah, I just want to say, like I always have on the cost of government, there's a certain level of tone deafness that we experience, that we observe at Asoro. I don't understand. I really don't.
Ah, it is absolutely wild. Okay, let's do some messages before we call it a morning. Oh, sure. Michael says it's an alarming trend that our ministers and officials can't do presentations with the proper data, and in most cases, they can't even read what they have for presentation. How deep is this mental and educational illiteracy? I wonder. Dimapuza says we all, including even journalists in Nigeria, have been curtailed and shortchanged by the government in power. Nobody complains or protests. You'll be clamped in prison for treason. Hunger and insecurity continue unabatedly. Who set us free? God, please help us. I don't know if God is coming down to do anything here. Ahmed from Lekki says, please, where does the earning from the LNG go? Because no one has ever said anything about how much comes from LNG. I think I feel they give them out. Ahmed is wondering on that one. Oluwaseyi says, I don't think the inflation is coming down anytime soon because the government isn't doing anything to our knowledge to bring it down. As for security in the north and the security forces being under-equipped, the levels of corruption in the defense ministry and the military isn't going to let any increase in their budgetary allocation to be effective. Just look at the past military chiefs in the last 15 years or more, in the last 15 years or more, and their proven and unproven involvement in corruption. And this is Igladi says, talking about the rot in the oil sector, I don't like the idea of having the president assigning the oil ministry to himself. It makes it difficult to probe the ministry when something is amiss. And they've come out to say that he's not the minister of petroleum, or so we don't know what's going on anymore. He further says, they buy new cars almost every day. How do they use the cars in the state house? Are they reckless with public property? Because that is what the cars are. True story. I was talking to us here. Tony from Marine Beach says, after bringing to light the activities of illegal refiners, we're still having issues of stolen crude on the fore. There's only one direction to look at right now. Start investigating Nigerians who own refineries outside our shores, as rumored, because those refineries must have products to keep running. And if such persons are among the high and mighty, they can just take the product out with audacity. I'm not sure but some people can be stupid enough to steal crude oil and take for sale outside because it's only a matter of time before they'll be exposed, even by their accomplices. Michael says, Lucarawa is coming and they are buying expensive mobile coffins instead of buying proper weapons. Breakfast is coming. So in fact, just asking what's the value of a Nigerian life? And Ned says the main point about our crude oil production is that data shows we produced 50 trillion naira worth, but NNPC just proudly announced that they remitted 10 trillion. At least I saw that. Now, this means the cost of producing 10 trillion naira from oil to Nigerians is about 40 trillion naira in brackets in IOC royalties, corruption, etc. etc. And finally, Barrister Daniel Kuda says if the positive economic statistics being reeled out by the government are not reflecting in the improved life of the citizenry, it means that it's artificial and deceptive as well. All right, it's called the morning. Thank you so much for all your messages and keeping it tuned. Thank you, Mr. C and Gbubemi, for keeping it locked right here on a Thursday, as you always do. Always a pleasure having you.
Same here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for having me.
All right, do have yourselves a great morning. And of course, keep it tuned to Smooth 98.1. We'll jump into the world of entertainment in the grapevine at 8:15.